Okay.
This conference will now be recorded.
Better position. That's a much better position.
Oh, yeah, the lower, yeah. Just one of those things you don't think about when you're setting it up.
Okay, 7 o'clock. I'd like to call the November 18th DeSoto City Council meeting to order. Start with roll call, please.
Lane.
Here.
Daniels.
Here.
Michael.
Here.
Murdoch.
Here.
Ritter.
Here.
All are present.
Okay. I would invite you all to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. First item tonight's our consent agenda. On the consent agenda tonight, we have approval of our minutes from our council meeting of November 4th and approval of pay ordinance number 914. Is there any item someone would wish to discuss or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion, we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Lane.
Yes.
Daniels.
Yes.
Michael.
Yes.
Murdoch.
Yes.
Ritter.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Item 2 is call to public. Members of the public are welcome to use this time to comment about any matter relating to city business not listed on tonight's agenda. Does anyone wish to address the council under call to public? Seeing none, we'll move on. Item 3, old business. We have none, so we'll go to item 4A. Consider pre-development agreement with Sunflower Redevelopment Group.
Yes, council, I'll introduce the topic. I'll go over the staff report that was in your packet. Then also in the room, we have, of course, Patrick Reevy, who was instrumental in the negotiation of the agreement. We also have Jeff White with Columbia Capital and Kevin Wimpy from Gilmore Bell, and also representatives from the Sunflower Redevelopment Group, including John Peterson, John DeHart, Keith Randall, Bob Johnson in the room. So if none of us can answer a question, then it's a pretty good question. So with that, just by way of introduction, we're excited to present this pre-development agreement for the entire council. It's been about an 8-month process now where we've worked in earnest with members of the Finance Committee. So our Economic Incentives Policy defines a Finance Committee made up of city staff members and representation from the City Council, including Mayor Walker, Councilwoman Murdoch, and Councilman Kevin Michael, who've been involved with these negotiations from the start. As we know and we've heard through periodic updates, the cleanup of the property, the environmental remediation on the property, is at a point now where the northern portions are clean enough to consider a redevelopment opportunities. And we've known here in this room, we've heard about many of those opportunities that have come through the Chamber and EDC over the last several years. And so at this time, the ownership group for the entire property is prepared to enter this agreement, which essentially would annex about 6,000 acres of the property. That's all of the former Army ammunitions plant north of 127th Street, to include also an 80-acre parcel at 95th and Sunflower Road as well, where the old water treatment facility was. The development agreement lays out terms for that annexation that would include an economic incentive that is a TIF district, tax increment financing district. We've done one of those here. I think the most recent one was for the Harps grocery store. Under a TIF district, the increase in property taxes are captured and used to fund infrastructure, either on-site or to the property. So the agreement in front of you contemplates a 100% TIF district. For this, the entire 6,000 acres was proposed to be defined as the overall TIF district. As development occurs, very specific project plans will be submitted to the governing body for consideration, and those type of project plans offer the type of details that you're used to seeing in typical developments, where very specifics about the road layouts, the type of uses, the buildings, the architectural landscape buffering, but also, importantly, is where the final decision will be made about economic incentives. The pre-development agreement contemplates 100% TIF incentives for each one, and that's consistent with our economic incentives plan policy that we put together a couple of years ago. For Sunflower, it specifically identifies TIF as a mechanism for economic incentive. The TIF statute, really, this could be a poster child for the TIF. Statutorily, the intent of that is to provide a mechanism that could clean up blighted or otherwise encumbered properties. And there's no better example of a blighted property than the Sunflower development would be. So contemplates the TIF district. Each project plan gets specifically looked at as that development occurs. It also has provisions for utility service, including water and sewer from the city of DeSoto, and coupled with that are assurances and transfers of ownership of a utility corridor, the one that we've discussed before, that runs along Sunflower Road from the plant all the way down to the well field north of 79th Street, the raw water mains that are inside that utility corridor, and the wells associated with the water treatment plant that we currently operate. Those will be transferred to the city. In exchange for that, we become, there's also a follow-on agreement that specifies that DeSoto will provide water and sewer service to the property. The overall underlying principle in all of our negotiations associated with this pre-development agreement was that the economic generator on the property will pay for 100% of the public infrastructure needs that will be needed to support the development. So in essence, no city funding is going to come and build sewer lines or water lines or roads out there. These are all of that will be funded by these TIF revenues that are generated after a project is in place. So with that in mind, that's really where we started with the negotiations. And the pre-development agreement specifies that in very specific terms in several places. So that's kind of the essence of the deal. I do want to go through a few points that I laid out in the staff memo. We talked about the annexation of the 6,000 acres. That's laid out in the pre-development agreement. Importantly, so that the pre-development agreement, it's the same kind of as a memorandum of understanding. It lays the groundwork for future agreements. And the first major one is a master development agreement. So that agreement will follow in the following months on from now. And that's where we really get specific about some of these terms. But the PDA lays a basis for that. In connection with the 6,000 acre annexation, the initial phases of development and the property that's really the most clean on the Sunflower site is in the extreme north end, and actually specifically the northeastern portions, kind of the boot heel, if you would, that extends. And I'm gonna zoom.
Let's call it the beak of the Jayhawk there.
The Jayhawk beak?
'Cause it's-
That's good. I forwarded on the staff report here displayed on your screen. This is the very last page of the staff report that was included in your packet. And this is not part of the PDA specifically, not technically included in it, but it is a representation of the entire site, first of all. So what this map shows is you can see the entirety of the 9,000 plus or minus acres bounded that's colorized. You can see the green bands around the outside are lands that will eventually be given to Johnson County Parks for a park system. And this blue shaded colorized area is the area of annexation. This line here where the blue stops, that's 127th Street. So the annexation will include all that area. 127th Street is the southern line of an annexation agreement between DeSoto and Gardner from 1989 that essentially says, DeSoto, we've agreed not to annex south of 127th. So this is really all of the property that we could annex in accordance and still be in conformance with that agreement. So it shows some general land use colors here in the northeast part of the property, and this would be 103rd Street on the north side. Evening Star Road essentially is along the west boundary. These colors in the northwest part represent land that KU either currently owns or will get after the remediation certifications are given. So that's memorialized there. Sorry about that. The northeastern part here shows a series of buildings, and the current plan is for a light industrial development on about 1,000 acres, take or minus, is the land that's covered by these building footprints. There's more than 10 million square feet of building represented in that area. So just in terms of where in space this is in relation to the city, that's the 6,000 acres, and the part of the property that's most immediately developable, that's most clean, that within the next 12 months or so can receive those environmental certificates needed to transfer to a development to actually have a development there, are represented. That area is represented here, and that's the 1,000 or 1,200 acres that's contemplated in the pre-development agreement. So the Tift district would encompass all of this area down to this blue line, but the first project plan will be likely a portion of these buildings, and the agreement contemplates maybe two or actually I think it says 3 project plans that would make up this entire 1,000 acres there in the northeast corner. Important to note, there's a great big red disclaimer on here. I wanted to show you a map, but also that the land use patterns and the building layout are, I wouldn't say they're completely speculative at this time, but they can and likely will change based on economic opportunities that present themselves over the course of the Tift district. So wanted to make that clear. So now that you kind of have an overall feel for where the annexation would be, the extent of the Tift district, and where the actual development is going to occur. So I think everybody's familiar. This street here, 103rd Street, turns into Lexington Avenue. The Lexington interchange with K10 is up toward the north there. Sunflower Road runs here, and then the Evening Star interchange is here. I'm sorry, Edgerton. This is the Edgerton Road interchange off K10, and then Evening Star toward the west. So that's the general area. I want to invite you, if you have any questions as I go through this, to stop me. I'm happy to see if anybody in the room can answer any specific questions. I did want to discuss a little bit about uniqueness about the contemplated Tift district. The reason the Tift district is so large is because the developer has a very legitimate need to generate revenues from economic activities that happen in one part of the of the Tift district to fund environmental cleanup and fund remediation efforts on the other. And this is kind of my synopsis, but I've always looked at the cleanup effort out there as being kind of two buckets, and we have people in the room that can correct me, and please do, if I misstate this. Essentially, there's two buckets of cleanup that need to take place before we can redevelop anything. And one bucket is the stuff that the Army did out there that might be environmentally hazardous. So it's the remediation of soils, it's the lead and acids that might be present, it's the explosives that might be in the soil, the really bad stuff that could make people sick. That's one part of the cleanup. The other bucket is just tearing down old buildings and getting rid of foundations and road beds that would be in the way of any type of redevelopment effort. Those are the kind of the two separate buckets. The Army, in very simple terms, has committed to and is performing on their obligation to clean up the environmental hazardous remediations. And it's about 4 or 5 years ago the Army came in and started really in earnest, really cleaning those areas up. And for the most part, they're on schedule to be done with that in 4 or 5 years. The other bucket of remediation has been happening over time, but that's the part that is incumbent on the developer to clean up after the Army's done with theirs, and that's the part that needs the funding generated by economic development on the property to help the rest of that. So, the Tift district is 6,000 acres. The initial project plan might be 500 acres, for instance. It'll generate revenues that are then used to clean up some of the second bucket of cleanup that exist in the rest of the 6,000 acres. And statutorily, the district has to be, you can't spend TIF money outside of the district. You can spend it outside of these project plans. So it's a little different. I'm not sure if there's any others around, but it's a little different, say, than the one we did with Harps, where everything was kind of in the same district. So that's kind of a technical difference there. In terms of the specific terms of the pre-development agreement, of course, the language is in your packet, several pages long there. There's an article on the annexation, like we talked about. The annexation would be 6,000 acres. The annexation is, there is conditions in the pre-development agreement that require the city to initiate the statutory procedure of de-annexation in the event that the master development plan is not approved, or the zoning is not approved, or the project plan number 1 is not approved by May of this year. So there is that, for the developers' concern that they'll annex into the city and then, for whatever reason they can't do a development. There's an obligation on the part of the city to initiate the de-annexation procedure. The TIF, in order to form a TIF district, and Kevin Wimpy is here in the audience, and Jeff White, who are both far more versed on the TIF issue than I am. But formation of the TIF district is a multi-step process, and the first step is later in the agenda tonight. It's a resolution establishing the time and date of a public hearing that would essentially create the overall 6,000 acre TIF district. There's veto power that's held by the Board of County Commission and by USD 232. In this case, all the whole 6,000 acres would be contained in USD 232's territory. So they would have a 30-day period after that public hearing to veto formation of a TIF. But tonight is just setting the public hearing for that. We talked about project plans and the actual level of incentive decision that will be attached to each project plan as it comes. And so the council tonight doesn't have to, we're not obligating to 100% TIF for all 6,000 acres. We're stating that as the intent, and it's in our policy. But with each project plan area will come specific plans for the layout, specific plans for the type of use that's going to be associated with that, and we'll be able to make a decision on a project plan by project plan basis whether or not 100% TIF is advisable. And the sorts of things that might change that equation could be massive infrastructure needs. We have to extend some water line or some road several miles that would be a cost, or the type of uses might not generate the type of spin-off economic benefit that we'd be looking for. Things of that nature. So each project plan will decide that as it goes. Also, in the area of Tiff, there's a couple of percentage provisions. The development agreement contemplates that Tiff proceeds, so the Tiff proceeds essentially are the property tax that would otherwise be applicable if the Tiff district wasn't there. So right now, let's say there's a couple 100-acre site out there that's just agriculture in nature, and it might generate $400 or $500, maybe $5,000 in tax a year. They put a development in there that's a $100 million investment. That's taxed obviously at a much higher rate, several $100,000. There's an increment there that'll be captured and not distributed to the taxing entities. Those funds are the TIF funds, and in the context of the development agreement, those essentially are the public funds that are being expended on the project. There's a provision that 80% of those funds can go toward the developer and the developer's costs for infrastructure inside the project plans, infrastructure, roads and water and sewer within those. But then 20% are dedicated toward the public infrastructure that the city would have to extend, the water, the sewer, the roads that are outside of the project plan that we might have to extend to make the project happen. There's also a provision in the agreement that requires that for every dollar in these TIF revenues that are generated and expended in a project area, there has to be $3 in private investment that comes into the project plan. So that's a significant investment, you know. So we don't want the TIF revenues to be funding all of the improvements on the site. So it's a 3-to-1 leveraging of public to private investment in the deal. The pre-development agreement calls for some 3 separate follow-on agreements related to utilities. One is the utility assignment agreement. This agreement will formally convey the rights to the easement corridor along Sunflower Road, formally convey ownership of the raw water mains and the water wells. It also will convey our right to use the sewer main that's in that corridor. But the developer did want to preserve some opportunity in the future for some capacity in that sewer main. They didn't want us to take it over and use all the capacity up and then not be able to serve the development of the sewer. So it's a use agreement, but for all intents and purposes, we'll be able to use that to connect sewer to not only to the Sunflower property, but to other areas that may develop in the future. The utility service agreement is the other follow-on agreement. It essentially designates the city as the utility service provider for water and sewer, and also obligates us to provide that service within a reasonable time when development occurs. There's also a public street agreement. That's a similar thing. The developer will probably self-perform public street improvements interior to the project site, and might even self-perform street improvements outside of the project site. So we contemplate that Lexington Avenue will have to be improved to a 4-lane arterial collector standard. 103rd Street will likely have to be improved to the same level. Those are contemplated in the development agreement here. They're shown on a map, but those particular decisions will be made at the time of project plan adoption after traffic studies and environmental other impact studies are submitted at that time. Lastly, some miscellaneous items there in the provisions at the end of Article 4. There are some lime residuals at the water plant. You know, we've been operating the water plant out there since the late 90s, 12 acres of property. The sewer plant and lagoons take up about the southern half of that, and on the northern half, looks like just open land, but there have been some the Army had historically deposited lime from the lagoons to that area and just left it. That lime is still there, and within the environmental remediation context of the entire site, the developer, the EPA, and KDHE have identified that as something that is a solid waste that has been left there. I've had discussions with KDHE as early on as 15 years ago about what might need to happen with that. There's several possibilities there. One of them just to leave it in place and cap it with earth and monitor it over time. Worst case scenario, we may have to remove that material over time as part of our regular sludge removal process that we have to do every other year for the lime lagoons. But I think the general reasoning behind accepting that is because we're going to be operating the water treatment plant on the 12 acres, and that'll be we're already under a permit from KDHE to do that. And so it makes sense that we're already handling lime residuals from there, so it makes sense that we take that on, take it off the plate of the developer, because otherwise it would probably cost, if KDHE requires complete removal of that materials, it would probably cost them a lot more than it would cost us to do that over the course of time. So the agreement just says that we would take over whatever KDHE obligations are associated with that. The second item here just talks about the storm sewer repairs that we did in 2020 along 95th Street. This is just east of Lexington Avenue. We spent about $48,000 on the repair there. There's a dispute about the ownership and maintenance responsibilities of that culvert. We agreed to settle that dispute within the terms of this deal, but we're not taking ownership of that. We still maintain that the ownership responsibility lies directly associated with the railroad because it's under the railroad bridge. We think it's part and parcel to that railroad, and so it should remain maintenance responsibility with SRL. And then the last thing is some administrative task associated with some sampling and landfill maintenance monitoring on the site that we've agreed to take on from an administrative standpoint. Again, this is a KDHE permit requirements. They've been doing these samplings for the last 10 years. Sunflower now has a consultant that does that. We would likely just hire that consultant ourselves, and the cost will be passed back to the developer. So wouldn't be a cost issue for the city. Those are the only points that I've identified specifically. We did have one late addition to the agreement. This is the only change from the agreement that was in your council packet, and it relates to the de-annexation clause that I talked about with the annexation petition. We added the language here that's in yellow, and essentially, I think and Patrick, I'll let you weigh in on this. Really, all it does, there was some misunderstanding between the SRL folks and us about whether or not the de-annexation procedure was a legislative action of the governing body or whether it was a quasi-judicial action of the governing body. And the difference is there that we can commit to a future legislative action of the governing body. That's generally allowable. We can say, yeah, we'll do that, if this thing happens. But we cannot commit to approving quasi-judicial action. So within the agreement, there's talks about, there's a future rezoning that'll need to take place. We don't say we're gonna rezone that. We say, we'll go through the process. There's a public hearing, people need to be noticed. We need to consider all the facts of that. And so essentially what we're saying is that the de-annexation is a quasi-judicial action. We can't decide that now. We can't commit to that now, but we can commit to initiating the procedures. And we can also acknowledge that based on the de-annexation statutes, that those conditions would appear like they are valid conditions to make a determination that the de-annexation would be appropriate at that time. So I think it's just strengthening language. It was kind of a middle ground between the two positions there. So did want to bring that to your attention on this is what appears in the yellow here is the only change that we're proposing. So
Mike,
with
if I
that,
could just
yeah, Patrick?
add to that, and as Mike said, you know, SRL had quite a bit of discomfort about, gosh, you know, we're annexed in and then, you know, you guys deny us on these particular items set forth. And what I've told them and what this language is intended, if that ever happened, you know, my legal opinion and feedback to you would be that contractually, you know, the city has committed to, if these things happen, we will, you know, de-annex. So we can't predetermine that. We have to have the public hearing, but you know, all day long, I would just say that, you know, if the council decided, you know what, we don't really care what the documents say, we're gonna, you know, keep you guys in the city, I think it's pretty clear a district court likely would overturn that pretty quickly to say that, look, you know, there are these contractual documents that sort of set forth the understanding of the parties and so that's kind of the, you know, we are trying to, you know, balance not predetermining something, but at the same time letting SRL know we're not, you know, we're not trying to, you know, pull any tricks either. So hopefully that makes everybody comfortable.
I think it might go without saying, but I did want to close to just report that, you know, the finance committee staff and our consultants do recommend approval of this pre-development agreement. So we'll stand for any questions you might have.
Okay. Questions from council?
So on the de-annexation, as far as the potential future rezoning requests, that would apply to whatever rezoning request they're asking, whether it's in the future land use or otherwise, to where if they wanted to make most of the southern half heavy industrial instead of light industrial, and it was declined, then that would trigger the de-annexation possibly?
As to that land, so it's
Okay.
pretty clear in the document, yes, if they come to us wanting a rezoning, that, or even a project plan, then the de-annexation provisions would kick in just as to that property that they're asking. And the thought behind that is that, you know, if we're not willing to allow them to do that, then, you know, they can see if the county will or you know, go another route, so.
Anything?
Any improvements on roads outside of the TIF district, like Lexington or 103rd, would those, the intent that those be improved with TIF or funds that are from the project type of area?
Yeah, yes, that's right.
The rail lines, would they be looking at having those become active again?
Possibly, yeah. You know, they've been very deliberate in keeping that possibility
And
open, as we
If
know.
you go back to that exhibit that showed
Yeah,
kind
and
of the
then
layout.
and then what impact would that have on the city as far as making sure that those were able to be actively served?
Yeah, so, is this the one you're talking about, Mayor?
Yeah, that- I mean,
Because the
where
rail
it's-
line goes right
This
through all
one
that.
shows the concept, this concept doesn't obstruct that existing railroad.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right, that's a good.
But what would be the impact on, potential impact on the city as far as making that an active rail?
Yeah, so, well, obviously, you know, any improvements that would need to be made to the rail would be the developer's responsibility. And if they could use TIF revenues for that, if there were enough. You know, the only two things that I can think of that if they needed that as an active rail corridor, one would be the Commerce Crossing, you know, that we did agree as termed in part of that. So when we did that project, we have a separate agreement with SRL. That if they ever have a bona fide use for the rail, not just a desire, but an actual project come in that needs rail, we would reestablish that. And so what we did at the time of the project, we raised the rail bed so that all we'd have to do is really put in the crossing. The other thing is the bridge replacement project on 83rd Street that we're going to be designing next year. We'll just make sure that it's sufficient to accommodate, rail traffic that would serve an industrial user. In terms of height clearance, those are really the only two impacts. Of course, just the impact of having a higher volume of rail traffic through town is the other thing that's hard to quantify.
But like Commerce Drive would be probably TIF funds to make that happen then? Or,
Yeah, I think our agreement obligated us to pay for those.
As I recall, it did, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm not sure they'd want to throw.
And it could be the tail end of TIF HARP funds that would,
Well, yeah, the HARPS TIF does have,
the
contemplates.
back end of that, we have.
Yeah, reimbursing the city for the money we spent there, so, yeah.
and one last question from me. The county, when they had their all or nothing views on the property, have they backed off of that?
That might be a better question for the development team. Yeah.
You want to step up and address that, Mr. Peterson?
Well, Mr. Mayor, if I get a chance to talk, I'm not going to pass on it. John Peterson with SRL. Great pleasure to be here this evening. There were some early introductions, but I want to make a point. John DeHart is the managing member of SRL, and pleased to have him here tonight. Everybody, I think, knows Keith Randall, former city administrator in the great city of Paola, but has been working on Sunflower for a long time. And if you ever want to know anything about what's out there, Keith is the person. And Bob Johnson with Poston LAPC, who's our development counsel. I would just say before I get to the question, we're excited to be here this evening. This has been 15, 16 years of figuring out how do we take this piece of property and move it through many discussions with the Army, KDHE, the EPA, and to finally come to the precipice of having ground that can actually be discussed for real redevelopment. It just, through all the years we've talked to your very capable staff, and I mean that honestly, I'm not just saying it because I'm at the City of DeSoto's podium, we came to the conclusion that would be a good partnership. This is a city with a vision, a city with the expertise that we can work together to make this happen. So thank you for the time to date, and we have discussions about de-annexation. We don't plan on doing that, but you put those provisions in if the unlikely event occurs. The question was about rail?
No, it was the,
Oh, the county. We have been in active discussions with the county. They're aware of that we're moving forward with a partial annexation of the site. There will still be a portion of the site remaining in the county. And we have had, I think, direct indication they still statutorily have a right to review the establishment of the district as does the school district. But from the leadership of the county commission, it's all go and proceed. I don't want to speak for the county, but we're pretty comfortable we're on a good path. Be happy to answer any other questions, but Mike really did an excellent job of overviewing
8 months of talks, right?
8
Right
months
there.
of talks. It's,
Kevin Ritter, anything from you online? Any questions that you might have?
No, I think it's great that city staff and the EDC group and the finance committee and SRL have been working well together, and I look forward to the future. Thank you.
And if I may, Mayor, kudos to your economic development staff, Sarah and the chamber. They have been great to work with, and we've been working with them a lot lately. There is a lot of interest, and the state's been actively involved in promoting Sunflower. It's there's a lot of activity, and really, John DeHart and I are. This is the time to do this. Timing is perfect. So, thank you. We appreciate the support. We look forward to working with you, and probably be years ahead here with that. We a big plate to have this, but we're excited about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, if I could just
Certainly.
add a comment, I just wanted to give a shout out to Jeff White and Kevin Wimpy. They've been incredibly just superstar help to Mike and I navigating through all this, and we couldn't have done it without them, so really appreciate their help.
Yeah, and Mayor, from, Finance Committee, if nobody else wants to chime in, I just want to add maybe a little characterization to it that you might be able to help as well. But, you talk about 8 months, and we were meeting weekly there for several months and bi-weekly for the last few months. So there was a lot of thought that went into it. A lot of people were working on it. But I think Mike made a comment at one point about, SRL protecting their interests and whatnot, and I'll just say that kind of through the process, the city had their, Mike and Patrick and us had our interests in mind, and Sunflower had their interest in mind. So there was a lot of, ground holding, if you will, but ultimately it really worked well all the way through over the course of months. So that's kind of what I saw as I sat in on those meetings. Mike led off with the comment about it being a poster child Tiff in terms of how it's being used for, cleaning up definitely blighted area in order to create opportunity. But I think the other key aspect of it is the little diagram that illustrated how the Tiff breaks down and how it's used, and probably credit to Mayor Walker's sketch plan on how do we communicate this, how this thing works. It's a very complicated document, but the way that this is getting broken down and applied, and then leveraging private investment, I think it's also a case study in public-private partnership. I think it will be a case study in public-private partnership down the road, of how you really create an economic development opportunity that's going to create community economic opportunity through jobs and tax spinoff and bettering the area, and positioning DeSoto. So it was way over my head a lot of times, but it was very collaborative, although protective process all the way through. Is that?
Very good, good summary. And you can see, so here's the result of my doodles at one of those long meetings. All right, let me just visualize what we're talking about here. Well, anything else from the council?
Mayor, I might ask Mike, I thought I read in there somewhere, I'm sure I did, that you talked about the school district, and you specified in there that they won't be losing their funding, that this would be a benefit for them, so that's probably important for the public. That was a true statement, right?
Yeah, Jeff White or Kevin Wimpy can speak to the school financing issue much better than I, but there are protected mills that you cannot TIF. And so there's 20 mills that essentially goes to the state for school, and there's about eight mills in local levy that also cannot be abated, so it would not be part of the TIF deal. So yeah, in that way, the school is protected and held harmless. I did bring up the school. We can talk about it maybe when we talk about the TIF issue in particular, but they do have a veto power over the formation of a district, and the size and scale of this district and the complex nature of what we're jointly trying to approve here might be some cause for pause on the part of the school. So that's a detail we'll have to continue to work through.
Yeah, thank you. I was important to know.
Yes.
Okay. Well, so I think we're at an action point. There's no further discussion, then our first step would be to approve the pre-development agreement, if we're so inclined.
I'll make a motion, we approve the pre-development agreement with Sunflower Redevelopment Group.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
Lane,
Yes.
Daniels.
Yes.
Hanamichael.
Yes.
Murdoch.
Yes.
Ritter.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. So that will move us to our next item. Consider annexation of 6,376 acres of land south of K-10.
Yes, council, probably a familiar issue. So this will annex essentially the 6,000 acres that we've been talking about.
Mike, if I could interrupt.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No,
Yeah, sorry about that.
Since this annexation agreement is coupled with, you know, a smaller chunk of land of which my firm has had work associated with, I'm going to have to recuse myself from this action. However, I would, you know, check with Patrick and, you know, if I can, just state for the record that I think that this annexation, as it relates to Sunflower, strictly as it relates to Sunflower, is a really exciting opportunity for our community. You know, I got on planning commission about 20 years ago, and every one of us sitting around here can understand how we've all been talking about, you know, well, what's going to happen at Sunflower? What's going to happen at Sunflower? What's that going to be? I'm really excited about the idea that finally we can have some actual control over what is going to happen out there through that partnership. And I can also say, you know, to look at that 6,000 acres as a really bold step for the city of DeSoto to put us on the economic development map for the Kansas City metropolitan area. Because from other economic development circles I've been involved in, the opportunity to have hundreds of contiguous developable acres is becoming a rare thing in the metropolitan area. So I'm excited about this being addressed here tonight. And with that, I will recuse myself.
All right. So the clerk would note that Councilman Hanamichael's left the meeting. Thank you. Continue.
Thank you, Mayor. Sorry for jumping the gun there.
It's all right.
Yeah, so as indicated, this annexation will be the northern 6,000 acres of Sunflower. It will also include the Gabriel property, which is a property that we've been working on economic development pursuits on for almost 20 years as well. Map of it is shown here, roughly bounded by Edgerton on the east, 103rd Street on the south, and K10 on the north and west. This encompasses two owners, Gabriel, who owns most of these parcels, and Heitzman, who owns another parcel there, kind of in the middle there. So in total, the annexation is about 6,376 acres. In addition to the properties that we'll annex, we'll also annex the adjacent roadways. And, you know, for Sunflower, largely there's no adjacent roadways. And the only adjacent roadway to Sunflower is 103rd Street. For the Gabriel property, Edgerton Road from 95th to 103rd, and then 103rd from Edgerton to Evening Stars also will annex the full right-of-way. So that means for us, we're taking over maintenance of those stretches of road too. I broke the news to Ron this afternoon that he may have to plow snow out 103rd Street all the way to Evening Star. He didn't bat an eye, he can do that. So staff does recommend approval of the annexation, which you can do by approving the associated ordinance 2520. In case you're wondering, the DeSoto current size of DeSoto is about 7,340 acres. So this will almost double our size.
I was thinking about that as I was walking in, that the mayor is going to double his city tonight.
That's right.
That's
But we're
pretty
not
impressive.
doubling the mayor's pay.
We could work on that for you.
I looked up square mile wise, and
Yeah. It's a lot. But any questions from
The only
council?
question I had to do with de-annexation, so the Gabriel property could still remain in the city if anything was de-annexed.
Yeah,
Would the
there's
roads stay, or how does that all work with?
Yeah, Patrick, I might let you handle that.
Yeah, my understanding is that if there was some defect tonight in this transaction that, you know, Sunflower went away, then that would put the Gabriel property at risk. But if that came later, the Gabriel property would stay within the city. So as long as tonight's proceeding, when we record the ordinance, everything goes well, then good shape down the road.
And the roads stay in
Yes.
city
Yep.
limits.
Yep.
Anything, Rob?
Nope.
Danny?
No.
Kevin? Ritter? Any?
No, sir. I'm ready for a motion.
Okay.
All right, I'll make a motion, we approve ordinance number 2520, granting annexation for specific land to the city of DeSoto pursuant to KSA 12-520A7.
Second?
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Call roll, please.
Lane,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Hatmaker. Motion carries.
Okay.
You'll just, no, Michael is an abstention.
I think that almost warrants an applause. Well, I do.
After how many years?
Yeah. All right, we'll move on. Our next item is consider resolution setting public hearing for Tiff district formation.
Yes, council, this would be the first step in the formation of the overall 6,000 acre Tiff district. The first process is this resolution tonight, setting the public hearing, the date and time for the public hearing for the Tiff district formation. Technology. Kevin Wimpy with Gilmore Bell prepared the ordinance. He also prepared this schedule that's Exhibit A to your staff report that lays out the process. January 6th is the contemplated public hearing date. And then you can see the process from there forward. If you have any specific questions about that, Mr. Wimpy may be able to answer those.
Okay. Any questions from council for either Mike or Mr. Wimpy?
That's resolution 1062.
Or a motion?
Patrick, could you repeat that?
Yeah, I was just noting that it would be resolution 1062 for purpose of your motion.
Thank you.
I'll make a motion, then we approve resolution 1062, a resolution of the governing body of the city of DeSoto establishing the date and time of a public hearing regarding the establishment of redevelopment district.
I will second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Lane,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Hatmaker.
Yes.
Ritter,
Yes.
Murdoch.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, now, time to take a big breath.
Thank you.
Look forward to working with you all very much.
Yeah, we do. I thought I'd hang around for the next item now that we're partners, if that's okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
See you soon. Thank you.
All right. Item 4D, consider final plat for Golden Lane.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Not to be outdone tonight, but this is a 1.5 acre development along Lexington and Commerce Drive. This actually was before you as a rezoning a couple meetings ago, and this is just a perfunctory step. The Planning Commission has approved the final plat, and it also there must be sent to the City Council for final approval and acceptance of easements and right of way. Everything, we reviewed it, we applied our subdivision regulations and the process that we go through the final plats. It checks out, everything is working as it's supposed to, and like I said, it's a good development. It has an office on office development on lot 1 and lots 2, 3, and 4 on multi-family on Golden Lane, actually, pardon me. Like to get after it. With that, I will take any questions that you may have.
Any questions from council on the plat? Or a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion, we approve the final plat of Golden Lane Development.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Roll call, please.
Lane,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Hanamichael,
Yes.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Ritter.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay.
No applause?
We will when you, we'll be there for your ribbon cutting, Dustin, when you.
Thanks, guys.
I'm sure we're gonna see something on that a lot sooner than we'll see a big warehouse out there.
See ya.
Thank you. All right. Item 4B, consider comprehensive plan update relating to infrastructure planning.
All right, I'll go through this real quickly, council, but this is also just a part of the perfunctory process we've been doing with all the upgrades to the comprehensive plan with the planning commission, with the land use plan, now the infrastructure plan, which a lot of it has been negotiated with the Tift district and preliminary project planning. This has been in our comp plan, as you well know, for probably 15 years now, so it's really nothing really new, but what we've really been doing is in the last few months, and we've tightened it up. We have a lot better idea where the water, sewer lines, road network is going to be. So we took that to the planning commission and also briefed the council, I said in July, the council had a briefing, and then we took it to the planning commission, had our public hearing, and went through the process of talking with them about it, going through the red line markups, and also holding the public hearing. The initial public hearing was in August of this year. The Planning Commission actually tabled it until it didn't adopt it until the September meeting, because we get sort of overwhelmed a little bit with a lot of red lines and markups and changes. So we went through all that, and they were comfortable with it, but they didn't want to see a clean version of the plan before we got approval from them, so that's why they tabled it to the September meeting. It was, the discussion at the September meeting was pretty brief, pretty straightforward. Mike did most of the work on the preparation of maps and charts, and if you had any questions, how those all came together. He'd be the expert on that, but as I said, it's pretty similar to what's been in the comp plan for 15 years. It's just been tightened up as we gone through the process of discussing utilities and infrastructure with Tiff and it's at SRL and this whole process that we've been through. So with that, I'll stand for any questions you may have.
Questions for Brad on the, were there any, I don't recall the discussion, were there any significant changes that the planning commissioners requested through their
No, not really.
deliberations?
I mean, it was just more about, you know, like the size of the sewer line and things like that. Are these things going to be adequate? You know, 'cause we've got that line that does run down the easement down past our water treatment plant. Is that to be the only line? Are we going to put another one? So we were able to answer a lot of those type of
Okay.
questions.
Thank you. Questions from council? Our motion to approve ordinance 2521.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2521, updating the comprehensive plan related to future infrastructure planning.
I'll second that motion.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion of the motion? Roll call, please.
Lane,
Yes.
Daniels,
Yes.
Hanamichael.
Yes.
Murdoch,
Yes.
Ritter.
Yes.
Mayor votes.
Oh, excuse me, Mayor Walker.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay. Thank you, Brad. Okay, advisory, well, I'm skipping executive session. I'm assuming we have none.
No executive session. no.
Okay. Advisory reports. Mike, what do you got for us?
I don't think I have a report. Holidays coming up, Mayor's tree lighting, December 6th, correct? Yes?
4th.
Yeah.
December 4th, sorry, 4th, yes. We're off next Thursday and Friday here at City Hall, we closed.
I think you probably all noticed, Whitney did send out an invite if anyone wanted to join the staff's, I think.
Yeah, the lunch.
Luncheon, she was
Wednesday,
asking for a response back.
Yep. No, the lunch is Tuesday.
Tuesday?
Yeah.
Be here Thursday?
Tuesday lunch.
And we
Thursday's
can,
Thanksgiving.
we'll be here in this room.
Friday, nobody around here is working, except for maybe some of us
All right.
around here in City Hall.
Okay.
Thursday, Friday. It's a good holiday to
That's
have
my
off.
report.
All right, thank you, Mike. City attorney,
Nothing for me.
city planner,
Mayor, don't have anything to add tonight, thank you.
city clerk.
Only thing I have is we have that CIP prioritization that is due tomorrow. I'd be happy to extend it to Monday. I know there's a lot going on in the city, but we've got about 50% of them back as of about 2 o'clock this afternoon. So we could extend it to Monday if somebody needs a little extra time.
Would you extend that to Monday? You won't get mine probably till Monday.
Okay, we'll make sure we do that.
Got mine.
Yeah, we
Hey,
do.
anybody
Yep.
need, convocation,
Agree with that request, Mayor.
council of mayors dinner?
Oh, yeah, the Council of Mayors dinner is December 1st. I've already sent it off and had
Okay.
everyone's confirmation.
Okay.
I think Councilmember Ritter is the only one on council that will not be attending.
Getting busy.
Anything else? All right. Council comments, Danny, would you like to start?
None, Mayor, thank you.
All right. Rob?
Just one item, and we don't have to go into detail on it tonight. I've had over the course of the years, probably 8 or 10 people ask about this. And it came up on In and Around DeSoto. You see it in and around DeSoto with people on lost dogs occasionally. And that's the pit bulls. And I've had, everybody that's talked to me has asked for that be repealed, to where basically we just have the dangerous dog ordinance.
Yeah, we have a breed-specific ban right now.
It's a dangerous dog ordinance with pit bulls specifically listed as in that, as opposed to just
Dangerous dog.
dangerous dog ordinance. I'm not one to say we have to follow other cities, but Overland Park has lifted theirs in lieu of just the dangerous dog ordinance, so that's something that maybe consider in the future.
Okay.
That's all I got.
All right, thank you. Lori?
I'm thinking something good, but I don't think I have anything. Thank
All
you,
right.
Mayor.
So, once a year, about mid-year, we do a review on Mike, right? And so,
Yeah, like
something like that.
summerish, May, June.
Yeah, and whenever you do performance reviews, it's always kind of based on what you remember most recently. But I think it's worth noting for Mike's next performance review, the caliber of work that he did regarding the assembly of that agreement, and at the same time, putting together a fairly significant capital improvement plan that just got adopted tonight as well. So both with city administrator hat on and city engineer hat on, I frankly was blown away at how you were able to pull together all of the costs and the plan and the routing for water, sewer, streets, and all of that. So I just hope when we get to Mike's review time, we remember that we've got a really high caliber city administrator. That's all I got.
Thank you, Kevin, appreciate that. I didn't do it alone. People helped me too.
Councilman Ritter, Kevin, you got anything?
I have nothing for this evening, Mayor.
All
I
right.
apologize for not being there in person. I had an incident to that, so sorry about that.
No problem. I had 2 items, and Brandon took care of one of them. I just wanted to remind everybody about the Council of Mayors dinner. And the other one was something to put on our radar. We just got through the KDOT project. The ramps are open, the bridge is open. It's probably going to happen. We know it's going to happen again next summer. Before that does, I talked to Mike about it. I want to make sure we have a conversation with KDOT that about schedule and how important it is that that's accelerated, and if that means maybe we pony up some incentive money, or if we can cut that construction to that closure down, you know, from there in 6, 7, 8 months to 3 months, and do that with a few dollars from our pockets, from our city coffers, it might be worth it to throw some incentive money at that. I don't know that that's even possible, but I've something I'm thinking about. We got to come up with some way so that we're not closed for another 9 months next year.
Seemed like there was a lot of downtime
Yeah.
that was nice weather downtime too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, it's not just the inconvenience of it, but that's that many more months of abuse on our other streets.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly.
So
Hill
the
Creek.
inconvenience, maybe people who live in Lawrence's problem, but our streets took a beating because of the
They
extended
certainly
time.
do.
Especially like Kill Creek.
Yeah.
And this is going to be critical because it's going to close our exit at a primary commerce, so it's probably going to hit us in our pocketbooks as well, you know, from sales tax and. Right. So I just want to put that on everybody's radar. I'm planning to, that way we can all hold Mike accountable for that, to make sure that KDOT meeting happens, because, you know, I won't be able to make that happen.
Put a star by this.
But I just.
Well, Mayor, I have worked with that company, on several bridges that were at 435, and they work 24/7, so.
Yeah, right.
It's always possible.
So here's my own personal observation, that the bridge at 119th and I-35 was closed and opened in less time than our project was done. So it tells you, it's all about resources and priorities, and so you know that it can happen, but I just want to make the folks at KDOT aware that this is a priority for us. I think that's all I have.
I'll make a motion, we adjourn.
Second?
All right. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? All right, we're adjourned.
This conference is no longer being recorded.